Sure. All right, guys, welcome and thank you for coming, taking time out of your, at least mine was super busy Monday. Thanks for coming for the next, 45 minutes. We brought together some business leaders, some economic opportunity kind of specialists for you all to have a conversation. And that's what we want this to be. That's why we call it the roundtables. We want to hear from the audience. We want kind of open dialogue. We'd like to have a conversation about the issues in Washington County and the different. Some of the different business opportunities and development things that have been happening. So we're going to have each of the roundtable panelists kind of introduce themselves, tell you about their background, and so you get a little feel about when they're speaking about where they're coming from and their background, so you have a little bit of knowledge on that. So without further ado, we can start over here with Jennifer. Do you want to just kind of introduce yourself?
That's what I get for moving.
See how you did that.
I'm Jennifer Fairfield. I am a small business owner. I own a shop in downtown Chelsea called the Garden Mill. Prior to purchasing the Garden Mill about 3 years ago, I spent, let's say, in excess of 25 years in the human resources industry. So my background is a lot to do with human resources, but also as a small business owner, getting to know a lot more about the economic opportunities here in Michigan.
I'm Paul Leonard. I'm the president of the West Washington Business Association. We're a group of about 250 small businesses, basically on the west side of Washington County. I own the Leonard Group, which is a small business consulting firm, and we deal mostly in helping mitigate losses, the regulatory burdens on small businesses, try to free up their time so that they can do what they do best. And that's what I think part of this is about, is how difficult it is for small businesses to get started and to live with some of these words they don't know. I find an awful lot that they don't even know of some of these things. And so we try to help them protect their business, protect their families, and teach them how to keep regulatory systems going. West Washington Business Association has been around for about 50 years, and it's different kind of names and things like this, but mostly we're small businesses, just like people here, and a few big businesses. So try to help out where we can.
I'm Gretchen Driskell, state representative in the 52nd district here, and also former mayor, and let's see, and commercial realtor. And so when I was mayor here, I did a lot of work around economic development. I was on the Amherst Board to represent all the cities around the county. City, Dexter, that wasn't on, as a city, but we did represent, I represent all the cities and townships as far as working between municipalities and businesses to try to make sure we have good partnerships and effective relations between business and government. And then I did a lot of work in downtown revitalization here in this community. And I also have, I'm a commercial realtor, so I'm familiar with some of the challenges around accessing capital and some other work actually around helping small businesses with some different programs, economic partnering. So I'm working in Lansing on, we have a bipartisan, what we're calling talent caucus, which is really how do we create a state environment that is friendly to the 21st century talent, but we're looking to attract and retain in the state of Michigan. So we've been working on different issue areas and trying to develop bipartisan legislation that would support those efforts. So that's it with the introduction.
I'm Courtney Nichols. I'm the city manager for the city of Dexter. We've been a city since November of 2014. I was also deputy clerk in the city of Allen Park back probably about 10 years ago now. We in Dexter, we've been really fortunate. We came through the economic downturn really well. We've had large developments with our largest taxpayers, Dexter Fastener. We've had small developments with some of our more local, smaller businesses. We are a member of Spark, so we engage there. We're the main point of contact for our businesses, for our goals, and finding them solutions to the problems that they face.
Mitch Rode. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Quantum Signal. We're an engineering product research and product development company here in Saline. We're actually headquartered over here in Union School across down the block. And I was an engineering student, PhD student in Michigan back in '99 when I started Quantum Signal with a professor. And since then we've built technologies and products for a lot of companies, big and small. Sony and Ford and GM and Whirlpool and all sorts of boys and girls. We work in mobile robotics, we work in forensics, we work in simulation and modeling. We work in a lot of different areas, but primarily we build products for other companies that put those products out to their customers. And so very rarely do we sell anything actually directly to the end user. I'm proud to say today is we've launched our first consumer product, which is a video game, a commercial video game called Rust Bucket Rumble. It's available now on the Steam platform, and you can go out and play it tonight. But that is an excellent example of a public, of some good industrious stuff at our place, as well as some public support. We actually were beneficiaries of the Michigan Film Office Film Incentive Program to incentivize that particular project. So that's one that I'd be happy to answer questions on too. But yeah, we are a thriving engineering company in downtown Saline, partially as a result of some of Gretchen Driskell's work in recruiting us here years ago. So pretty good.
All right, thank you. And so I have just some very simple questions for you guys, and like to start a dialogue, start a conversation, and 3 or 4 of you want to answer each one. You don't feel the need for everyone to answer them all, but we'd love to hear from you. So we'll start at this end, either Paul or Jennifer. What do you see as some of the biggest challenges facing small businesses today, whether that's here in this community or statewide or throughout the country?
I'll take the first shot at that. I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is our lack of commitment to education. I think that having an educated workforce is extremely important to small businesses. Having the ability to have people who can add and subtract at a minimum, have good conversations, be able to be well written and well spoken, so that when we are communicating with our customers, whoever they may be, that our employees are able to actually effectively communicate. And I think that our lack of commitment to education in this state and keeping our schools, public schools funded well, is really going to be a major negative impact on businesses, especially small businesses around here.
I got an email from one of our members who owns a couple of franchise restaurants, and she said the biggest problems that are surrounding them right now is the Obamacare and the overregulation and the money and the cost of all of that. Also, something coming up from the Department of Labor is that they are considering making franchisees and franchisors co-employees. If they do that, that is going to really, really overburden those small franchise owners of small franchise businesses. Again, it goes back at recently a study was done by the National Association of Manufacturers, and the regulatory burden goes on the back of the smallest business owners. Regulatory compliance costs per year for manufacturers is $13,750 per employee for large manufacturers. Small businesses under 50 employees, $34,671 per employee. So there are some other things that are going down in Washington now. President Obama has done some things, and they're trying to get the regulatory burden down, but it sits on the back of Congress. So the only other thing, since tomorrow is coming up for the vote, is the roads in Michigan. And the schools.
I guess I would say, I have not personally owned a small business, but I've worked with a lot of small businesses, either as an elected capacity or as a commercial realtor. And I think one of the major things was access to capital, and that has come up over and over and over again. When I was mayor, we worked with some banks to develop a loan program for facade improvements, which, actually we had challenges with that, but we were really trying to get some access to capital that we were not able to provide at the local government, because we had restricted revenues, but really wanted to invest help the businesses be successful and continue to grow. And I've also had that happen a lot of times with some of my clients when we were trying to get into space, or there's a lot of constrictions I think nowadays on access to capital. So that would be something. I'm really here mostly to learn from others that are actually in small business, but I do have some perspective, and I'm just interested to hear people on the ground versus, I know that you're also from my perspective, that what are the things that we currently do or should be doing that help facilitate business. So I think that's and then the other thing that I think has been a continuing ongoing discussion from the governor on down is the access to talent, and that means talent with the education, the background of the kind of workers that we need in technology or whatever careers we're looking for. That seems to be a huge challenge, and I think that's partly because it's difficult to get talent to move to the state because of some of the environment that we have currently. So that's why we started the talent task force caucus and meeting. That there's a lot of things that people are looking for, young talent in particular. They're looking for in the state, welcoming more acceptance of diversity, investment in transportation and transit in particular, having a good quality of life. So my experience has been that people, we've all heard about the Google expansion, that's big news, but that's because, Ann Arbor's been making the kind of investments in quality of life that I think partly the investments, and then also having the university, or obviously having one of the co-founders from that university helps. So when Mitch, does his next big expansion to a couple hundred people in downtown Saline, that'll be really exciting too. But anyhow, so I think that talent has always been a driving factor. Again, when I was on the sport board, that was a constant conversation about talent and what was it that people were looking for. And when we brought people to Michigan and to Washington County, they were looking for a good quality education for their employees and for their employees' families. That's how they recruit. Strong infrastructure, be able to move goods around. And that infrastructure also includes rural broadband internet and broadband, and that's also something that I've been working on more in the rural areas because that is challenging. In the rural areas, a lot of folks don't have access, or the access they have is limited on the data. So data cap. So I think those are things that would really, those are barriers.
I can ask you guys all just to speak up a little bit. I think voices are getting lost in the ceiling. It's a little bit hard to hear back there, so just a little bit louder from everyone.
Yeah, I was thinking, we don't have as many tools, I think, to help small business as we do our large business, because when, Dexter Fastener or K-Space, which is another University of Michigan spinoff in the industrial park, wants to do an expansion, we have ways to help them with, industrial facilities, tax exemption on 50% of their increase, tax capture, that sort of thing. But with a small business, we don't really have many tools because you don't have the job, we don't have huge job creation numbers that you do with a project like that. And so we set up a lot of meetings for our businesses in the state of Michigan, but that is much more difficult for a small business than it is for a large business that has a lot of programs available to them. So I think that's interesting. And then the talent thing we have talked about too, and I've heard the talent from our businesses in the industrial park, and I've never really thought about it actually from a small business perspective, that it would be the same, type of issue. So
I'd say uncertainty is one of the biggest problems, and what I mean by uncertainty is that when you have things like Congress not passing the R&D credits until like after the fact. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but there's R&D credits at the federal level for reinvesting in technology and research. And it's been going on year after year. There's credits, and just recently they waited until I think January to pass them for the year before. And so these are the kind of things that don't help with planning on the small business side and kind of hurt things. I mean, uncertainty on tax structures, uncertainty on things like sequestration. As a defense contractor, when they do things like sequestration and things like uncertain and they don't know how they're going to handle it, that locks up not only the defense industry, it locks up all the capital markets, it locks up everything. So you don't have access to the money, as Gretchen mentioned, and it just hurts. I'd say uncertainty hurts across the board. When the state shifts its tax structure and changes the way the property taxes are handled, or the personal property taxes are handled, or changes how the business tax is handled, and it's not very clear to the people that are there on the ground, it creates uncertainty, and again, it stops people from making changes, and it has everyone just sit there and wait and see. And I think that wait and see is a bad attitude, because in other places, there's no time to wait and see. If you go out to the coast in technology, people are, living and dying these companies in a period of 6 months or 8 months. Whereas, we're waiting and seeing how the tax structure is going to be for the next 6 months, sort of thing. And so I think uncertainty is probably one of the worst things that any business faces, particularly small business, and it generates problems for folks like me. So.
All right, so talking about some of the issues that are barriers to small businesses, how can government and businesses work together to create a better community, to get rid of some of those barriers? Is there any way that government and businesses can work together in that sense? And I don't know if, Courtney or Gretchen, being on the government side, if either of you want to start.
No, I think we've just tried to be a resource and like you said, with uncertainty, have a consistent message and consistent rules and regulations and things like that, so that when someone comes in, you're treating everybody fairly. That's a big thing we have from our governing body is consistency and fairness and making sure everyone's treated the same. And also, part of the thing that we do try to do as well is introducing businesses to each other, because that's a helpful network. We have a lot of businesses right now doing projects and they're using other businesses in the community, so we try to facilitate that. Just try to do that. We had a small business that was they're a metal fabrication, and they barely survived a recession, and they have a pretty big growth plan, and so we try to bring them together with the state and how to find the programs that they can use to access what they need.
Yeah, I think training, there's actually training dollars out there for that we can actually partner and get, that I've done as a state representative, so we should talk about that a little bit, for that might be something we can tool. Some of the things on a local government level, the partnering, like just networking, I think is really important, and then doing the listening about what are the challenges. So when I was a mayor in Saline, actually internet was a big issue back then. So it continues to be an issue. I actually, when I was realtor, had people rent offices in Saline because they couldn't get internet in their home. So I think that listening to and building relationships and being aware of what the business challenges are, and more, laying a good environment, a supportive environment, like I said, about transparency.
Because if you don't know,
Yeah,
they're not
having
gonna come to you
relationships.
with their problems if they've never met you. And not everybody thinks to go to the government first. Either people think to go to the government first, or they don't, and so
Yeah,
if
sometimes
they're not
it's too late.
comfortable with it, right?
The Representative Driskell had a meeting here, I don't know, about 9 months ago about crowdfunding.
Right.
And access to capital is, some of my clients have been bringing this up to me. Where can I get some money? It's still slow. Crowdfunding is an example of how government and businesses work together, and I had a wonderful story there about a brewery starting up in Tecumseh and the crowdfunding. It was very interesting. And now the SEC is starting to get involved in that a little bit, so kind of mess that up maybe. But, that's one of the biggest things, and we have banks on it's our memberships, the West Washington Business Association, and we have a couple of bankers who are on our board of directors. And we need to do some things to ease that up a little bit. The other thing that I see is that the farther away that you get, the more difficult it is. The people in Washington on both sides of the aisle, just don't seem to get around, and they don't have the idea. Gretchen has been involved in a lot of things on the city level, on the state level, and things like this. So, although this is not a campaign, right from the day, we need those kind of people who have worked in business, who have been on the small level, on the medium level, and can bring what we have to say and what we need down there and to Lansing too. So it's all about dialogue.
Furnish, would you like to chime in on any of that?
Sure, I would just say that one of the reasons that we're actually here down in Saline is a result of cooperation from the city folks. I mean, we started in Ann Arbor, appropriately enough, as you move on to spin out, and we thought that was going to be the place that we were going to stay because it has a cachet and the name is good, and and everyone knows where Ann Arbor is from out of town. But as we were looking for headquarters for a new place, we started looking around Ann Arbor, and we looked in Saline because I live just west of here. And in talking to the Chamber of Commerce and then talking to the city, and when Gretchen was there and our city manager say, hey, what are the available options for us here in the city of Saline? How could you guys work with us to start our company down here, to move our company down here? And they were extremely helpful and cooperative, so much so that we decided to definitely drop the cachet name of Ann Arbor and go with Saline. Not to say that Saline doesn't have a great reputation, but in the high technology field, if you're trying to promote your business, it's definitely a consideration. And I would say that we've suffered, we have not, and it turned out to be an excellent move for us, an excellent move for our staff. We've had a number of our staff members move down here as a result, and it's just a great way of life. And so, would I have thought of moving to Saline the business? Not necessarily, but when the city came to me in the Chamber of Commerce and said, hey, you should think about it, here's some places you could look at, here's some opportunities we're going to provide for you. It was the kind of response that I never got out of Ann Arbor, honestly. And so I think that, not to slag my beloved Ann Arbor friends, but I think that, it's a good example of how city and business can work together to create some jobs and to try to build something up,
So what do we think can be done to motivate investment in our local communities, whether that be business or recreation, anything like that? Is there different ways we can garner investment for our communities?
Well, I think there are a few different levels of investment. When you talk about investment, I mean, everybody in this room is an investor in their community, simply by buying from their local stores, by frequenting their local restaurants. They're investing in their communities. So I think one of the things that we need to make sure is that everybody understands that you are an investor, that it's not just about bringing large dollars from groups or individuals or government, but every individual in this community can be an investor in their own community. And that if you look at the numbers for when you spend your money locally, instead of going online and ordering whatever it is that you needed, how much of that, what is it, something like 68% stays in the community. And so making sure that individuals understand their part in that investment, I think, is the first step. And then there are some additional steps to, banks being willing to help small businesses. Small businesses don't always look on paper like a great investment. Getting started as a small business can be very difficult. Expanding as a small business can be very difficult. So having the banks maybe take a step back and say, it's not just about how it looks on paper, but how other aspects of that business look. And then I think that the government can certainly be helpful in encouraging investment and helping small businesses understand where there might be opportunities for the government to invest. There are grant programs, there are the crowdfunding that's now available that makes it a little bit easier for, you didn't used to be able to do crowdfunding, and what's that, right? So those sorts of things that help everybody understand what's available to them, I think that can be a good part of the government's role in helping businesses get investment.
Yeah, we forget sometimes that about 95% of the businesses in America are small businesses. That's where the jobs are generated. That's where you go next door to do some shopping, and we have to get that on our mind. That's how America has been. And to look at the people now, we have a lot of work. We have the Dodd-Frank Act, and there's some good things in that. There's some bad things in that. Financial institutions lost a lot of money. Back when credit was pretty easy 10, 15 years ago. But it's time to start easing up on that a little bit because the optimism index is climbing up for small businesses. Mitch made a good point, though. There is so much uncertainty that it drives you crazy. You don't know what's going to be like 6 months from now. And all of those things, education, stuff like that. So,
I think if you want to promote investment in a community, I think that everyone needs to I hate to use a trite phrase, buy local. And it's not just that, like when we encourage our folks to go out and eat pizza, to buy from a local pizza vendor like this fine restaurant, but it's things like, if you're an auto company that's surrounded by local suppliers, you should consider those local suppliers and work with them and throw them some business, and look for the right, I'm not saying as a charity case, I'm saying that you should consider them very heavily before you send it out to another country or another community. It's more than just, well, we take some of our profits and we fund some of the local school activities. It's in generating jobs and building a community through things that are, things that are of value and collaborations that are of value. And so, we've often done projects with the Army base here locally in Warren, and that's been good for us. But sometimes we get a little frustrated that they go outside very, very often to folks, even internationally. They have partners that they work with, and we wonder, where's the buy local? Was there other military bases I know where it's very specifically buy local? And so, if I were to put forth two words that would, say, here's how we reinvest or invest in our communities, it would be buy local. It's our backyard, and if we don't invest in it, then who will? So.
Right, and I think at every level that buy local really has to resonate. As a very small business, I own a garden shop, and I get a lot of people who come to me and say, well, your prices are a little bit higher than, say, one of the big box stores, and my answer to them is, well, that's partly because I don't just buy my items from everywhere. A lot of the items that I purchase are purchased right here in Michigan. Almost every flower I sell at my store is grown right here in Michigan, and so the money that they're spending at my store supports me, supports the grower, supports the supplier to that grower. And many of my growers get their supplies from a local business right in Howell. So it really is at every level, not just the individual purchasing, but the business that's purchasing from another business that's purchasing from another business. It really, that is investment in Michigan.
So going off of that, being an everyday citizen, being someone in the community, other than buying local at your stores, is there anything else that can get me involved? Is there anything else that we can contribute to the local economy, or we can help the economic opportunity of our own community? Are there other ways, maybe here locally, or that you know of throughout the county?
Well, I would say that some of the crowdfunding things that are going on, they're really looking very exciting for small businesses, because it's getting people the opportunity to invest in their local small businesses. So that the brewery you were talking about, that they raised a great deal of their capital through a crowdfunding or crowdsourcing program that helped them get off the ground. If that hadn't happened for them, they wouldn't be there. They got a matching grant from not Spark, but was it Spark? Okay. The investment there, the Spark saw that there was an investment from the individuals who were willing to put their money into this program, and they were also willing to put their money into it because there was such a force behind it. That got business off the ground that might not otherwise exist. So I think that searching out opportunities to invest in new businesses, expanding businesses, other opportunities in your area, that's a great way for individuals to get involved.
I think, at a macro level, you can buy local at the micro level, but at macro level, I'd say voting for the right people. And this is not just to promote Gretchen here, but, when you look at Congress and what things happen, when things like sequestration go down, everyone thinks that that's just, this kind of nebulous thing that happens up at a macro level that doesn't impact like little guys or small business like myself. And that's completely false. It's like when they shut down the government through whatever kind of ideological means, they shut down the government, I don't get paid. And if I don't get paid, then my guys don't get paid, and they have a hard time putting technology on the ground in our soldiers' hands in Afghanistan, which is what they do. And so, I put technology in the hands of the Secret Service to put away bad guys. I put technology in the ground to keep our soldiers safe. And then we've got some folks in the legislature that decide that, hey, we're going to shut down the government, you guys aren't going to get paid. And so if you want to change things or improve your local small business and support your community, you need to look at your legislators and whether they're voting in the interest of your community, not just in the interest of their ideology. And so, I would strongly recommend that you look at the voting records of your current legislators and consider what the alternatives are and how it can go. So, that's my 2 cents.
Can I just say that we did the crowdfunding, I was on the Commerce Committee last term, and it's actually called the MIO legislation, and it's a tool, it's different than crowdfunding, and it's kind of technical, and we did do a panel because small business development was an important part of my work as mayor, and I'm very interested in helping small businesses be successful. I think what we've learned, and it's part of our talent, our bipartisan talent boxes, is not really being utilized. So one of the things that we're trying to do, and one of the reasons that I'm doing this roundtable, is to talk about what are the things that, so it's great to hear that you guys are thinking that's a great legislation, but then how do we get that, like it's kind of this whole Norman thing, like we talk about it, but actually connecting the dots sometimes doesn't always work. So, and you're bringing up some really good points, because our caucus, right, we've been actually talking about a couple different things. Also, the fact that legislation isn't being used as well as it could be around the state, that's a question. The other thing is there's been some legislation introduced to help support, I'm not sure, what was it called, corporate? They're social entrepreneur.
B corporations.
Is it Yeah, B corporation. So that was introduced last term, and I'm not really that familiar with it, but we're definitely looking at that because it seems that states around the country that have introduced that have, again, generated some more investment in the communities and the businesses. It's a way to attract capital. So, some of the ideas that you have would really help us at the legislative level make good decisions. So, I think the other, I mentioned the placemaking pieces on the town caucus. It's been interesting to be trying to figure out how to solve the problems and then get it out into the communities that we want to take advantage of it. So really appreciate your guys' perspective. And if you have any other questions about it, you know how to contact my office. But we'll keep working on it, and maybe we might talk about having ultimately at the end of the panel, like maybe in the winter or spring, we could bring in some of the experts that have implemented. Chris, who came to that panel I had last year from Adrian, he actually helped develop the legislation for that. So, and the other thing that we haven't really talked about that we find interesting is local food systems, and if you have any comments on that, because that is I'm also on the agriculture committee this term, and that's a really big issue. Again, it's a lot about shopping local, but we started farmers market recently, and it's pretty vibrant, and it really helps connect the kids to where the food comes from, and I think on so many different levels it helps the economy, it also helps the health of individuals. And I know Washington County in particular is very strong in that. Amanda Evans was the mayor of Saline. She has been doing some great work on that, and I was wondering if you so that's it. I'm asking a question of the panel. We're going to open it up for.
I'm running out, so you guys keep talking about it.
I know folks here, but if you guys have any comments or thoughts about the local food systems, and I don't know, is Dexter doing anything?
Yeah, well, we have a farmer's market and all of the farms table where they work with us, farmers to bring in stuff that they can actually in the school. We also have a community garden. But when you're talking about investment in the community as investment in small business or in business in general, I think that people can invest in the community by make the community that quality for the quality of life. So even if you're not investing financially in the community, if you're investing your time in the community and you're building those groups or organizations that add to the quality of life, there's a lot of them. Lions, Kiwanis, all those. Our Kiwanis Club closed after 100 years of being in existence. They didn't have a membership anymore. But a lot of those organizations are things that add to the quality of life. So I think getting involved in those sorts of things has that sort of benefit as well, because those organizations, they all have dinners or they have investment in the community. Right. And those matter.
Jennifer's on the DDA agency, right?
I am very new on the DDA trustees. But one of the things you brought up in terms of local foods, I also am on the committee in Manchester for the Manchester Community and School Gardens. And what we're trying to do is bring, and it sounds very funny, but bring awareness of eating healthy foods, fruits and vegetables to the rural communities. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but it is some appallingly low number. How many fruits and vegetables are actually eaten by the people in, say, Manchester, the Manchester area? You would think it's a farming area. Doesn't everybody who lives on a farm eat fruits and vegetables? Well, no,
Amazed me
because.
when I realized what farmers eat.
Yeah.
Go out to McDonald's and get lunch.
And it's not just what they eat, but where they get their food from. In our area, we don't grow a lot of edible crops. We grow a lot of commodities. When you go past the farms around here, you're seeing wheat, soybeans, and corn. Those aren't things we're eating right out of the farm. And so teaching people to go back to getting the fruits and vegetables that are good for them. Yeah.
I mean, you look at the farmers markets though, and you look at the signs when you drive by this farm with 1,000 acres of corn, and they've got honey, and they've got an orchard, and they've got
And there is
a little farm
a lot
store
more
there.
of that happening, but it's taken some time to get people back to that. It used to be that when you had a farm, you basically were able to subsist on everything that you had at your farm. You had animals for meat, you had crops, you had things like tomatoes and lettuces and greens of other sorts. A lot of that isn't grown on your own farm anymore. So we're getting back there. There's a lot more awareness of that. But I think that that's a community effort. There are a lot of people involved in community efforts. The 5 Healthy Towns Project is a big one that is trying to get people to be more aware of the fact that we're lousy at eating fruits and vegetables. And so supporting farmers markets, that's one of the big things that we're doing as part of the 5 Healthy Towns Project, is supporting farmers markets. Because connecting people to fresh fruits and vegetables and fresh food in general and locally grown food in general is a wonderful thing to be able to make that connection.
Well, the whole CSA movement is.
Absolutely, and that's really taking off, and I'm so happy to see that.
We want to talk about how each individual can be involved, and I have a little story that happens to come up. I'm a little upset right now about Coors Mine Killers, but we'll pass that. Last night, I was at a spaghetti dinner at Knight's Restaurant on Dexter in Ann Arbor to raise funds for a new coffee house and tap room in Ypsilanti called Cultivate. And when that was bought by the Grace Ann Arbor Church, and when they bought that, they bought